Hey, everybody, can you believe it? We are one more round away from IHSA state final time. It is the semifinal edition of the Third and Leng podcast. Welcome back, everybody. Glad to have you aboard. We'll be here for the next, I don't know, multiple minutes, and we will break down the upcoming 8A state championship game, which will be played this Friday night at Monmouth College. We will also break down Class 1A through 4A, the state semifinal round. And joining me, as always, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Matt Leng. Hello, sir.
How we doing, guys? Everybody adjusting to the cold weather and great football.
Yeah,
We're
I,
getting one step closer. One step closer.
I was just going to say, if you didn't think winter was coming, oh, how mistaken you are. Winter is here. We're recording this on Wednesday evening. I have snow flurries and snow on the ground here at the O'Halloran Ranch, and it is definitely winter, my friend.
Yep, and even though that precipitation is not really building up in inches, it's getting wet, and then the cold weather is coming in, and the ground is getting harder. Traction's getting a little bit more slippery, and hey, what can you say? Mother Nature has reared its ugly head.
Yeah, it's going to make for some interesting games, semifinal games this weekend for sure. And as I mentioned, the 8-man final on Friday. Let's start there, Matt. Let's talk a little bit about the upcoming 8-man state championship game. Unfortunately, I had the best of intentions. Had every thought to go cover the 8-man state championship game. Unfortunately, the Leonard Bowl happened, and I am now being sent to Springfield to go cover the Leonard Bowl. Again, hard to complain, make me go see one great game over another, but I feel bad for my friends at the 8-man football. Again, I apologize. It's something kind of out of my control, but I will definitely do my best to get down next year to see a game for sure. But still, wanted to get that out there to everybody and just let you know. So I will be going to the Leonard Bowl on Friday in Springfield instead. When the man tells you, you got to do what you got to do. So that's what we're going to do and leave it at that, Matt. But again, the state championship game is set in 8-man football. Amboy taking on West Central, the 5 seed taking on the 2 seed. Just again, Monmouth College, Friday, 7 o'clock kickoff, $7 admission. Matt, just your overall thoughts on the upcoming 8-man state championship.
Well, it should be a dandy. I'll echo your thoughts too, Tim. I can't make it. I have family obligations. Monmouth, Illinois is a city dear to my heart. I was born in the Maple City, and from everything I've heard, especially last year when it was again an NUIC battle between Orangeville and we had Orangeville and we had Polo. Hey, that was a great game. It was packed to the rafters. This Friday night game, I mean, you're gonna throw out all the scores in comparison, and and even the week 9 blowout that West Central had against Amboy, you can just throw that out. The last time these teams played was October 21st. It's a different Amboy team now. They have one senior on their team, Amboy does, and it's going to be really interesting. It's the Tucker Lindenmeyer. He is the senior quarterback. He's been out 5 or 6 weeks with an injury. He didn't really come back till the second round of the playoffs. They have a running back number 5, Landon Welkel. He's about 5'10", 160. And then they have a running back, Quinn Leffelman. He's about 5'10", 150. So they're not overly powerfully big, but they're very, 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 very gritty on defense, and they've done a great job. They're 10-2, and let's face it. I mean, one of their losses that they lost to was against St. Thomas More. They avenged that, and now here they are against the favorite in a West Central team that, I mean, literally has kind of put 8-man football on the map with this incredible ending that they had against Polo. So West Central.
Yeah, we gotta talk about that a little bit. You sent me that video clip, and I'm just like, you have got to be kidding me. Walk the fans through, in case I hadn't seen that, of how that Polo game ended.
Well, I apologize to Jason Kirby because I was literally down in the dumps after our game. I was unthawing with Eric Lyons. He sends me this video, and I couldn't. Obviously, it was done earlier in the day because
Right.
they played earlier in the day, and the game was at Polo, and I being kind of dumbfounded and just trying to get warm. I asked Jason. I was like, "Well, was this year or last year?" And he goes, "It's this year. It's
You
this
goof.
year. We just won the game." So, ladies and gentlemen, basically what happened was West Central down 48-44 has the ball with 5 seconds left, and their stud Caden Drosty gets a toss sweep. So if you can imagine, you have 5 linemen up in the line of scrimmage.
It's so cool. It's so cool to watch a toss sweep in 8-man football. It's the best.
It's the best. And here's the thing, I will say this, and I'm not trying to shorten the game. Literally, I'm not trying to, but it is a shorter field.
Right.
But it literally, if you can think about it, you have a center, 2 guards, 2 tackles, a quarterback. That's your 6. And then you got a fullback and a halfback. It's the last play of the game. All that end has to do is reach. They didn't pull anybody. The fullback makes a kick out block. This is toss sweep left. Vince Lombardi would have been very proud. And he runs, makes 2 cuts.
Made a great cut.
House.
Great cut.
And the announcing is off.
It was awesome. It was great. Whoever did that, tremendous.
It's just a wonderful thing. And the Polo kids are just distraught because basically what happened from my report in this game, Drosty had a key turnover kind of earlier in the game that kind of gave Polo a possession and kind of gave him a freebie. So here, Polo, Ted Alston, he had his kids just really foaming at the mouth and playing well. And basically what it was, no one's really been able to stop Kirby's team. So they had to outscore them, and they're up 48-44 with 5 seconds left, and you run toss sweep. It was just an incredible ending, and tip your hat off to West Central. So going into this game, just to finish up my report on this, Tim, is West Central literally is probably about 30 minutes away from Monmouth. So they're going to have the home field advantage. They're not a one-man team, okay? Parker Meldrum is the fullback, I think, that's kind of the secret sauce. 5'11", 190 pounds. And then Mason Carnes is a monster at quarterback. He's a defensive end. He's about 6'2", 215. And then, of course, Drosty, 5'11", 180. So this team is really hitting on all cylinders, and they're playing really well. But, Friday night, it could be a cold. It could be snowy. These guys want to put the ball.
Definitely going to be cold.
And they want to put the ball in the hands of their studs and keep it on the ground. So expect a heavy dose of, just these guys running the ball. Maybe a big counter or a big play action pass game, maybe with emotions kind of running high, could lead to a sudden change. But as most games do in the 8-man, it's going to basically depend on that line of scrimmage and who wins that battle. These 2 teams are here because they're just really, really solid up front. Which offense can stay ahead of the sticks, not really have any penalties, and not turn the ball over. It's no different than 11-man. You can't turn the ball over. But if Amboy can kind of learn from their mistakes in week 9, I think they're going to take it into the fourth quarter. I think it's going to be a really good football game. I think West Central is still the team to beat. They're 12-0 against a 10-2 Amboy team. Yep. But, man, you couldn't ask for a better atmosphere on Friday night in Monmouth.
And going back to that semifinal game, you look at Polo defensively on that last play. They played it great. They strung it out. They wouldn't give him the outside. They contained him. The defensive back was able to turn him back inside. The back from West Central just made it incredible.
Drosty made
two
great cuts. Great cuts. And he knew when to cut at the right time. And one thing I will say, which would be exciting for this game and for all the people that are going to show up Friday night, last year's game between Polo and Orangeville is kind of maybe the perennial favorites going into that game. And that game turned into a 12-7 victory for Polo. I do not expect the same thing to happen in terms of a low-scoring game. I expect this to be kind of a high-scoring game. And regardless of what happens, I think it's going to be another incredible end to another outstanding 8-man season in Illinois. And like we said, I think the best is yet to come. And I think 8-man's going to grow, and it's here to stay for a long, long, long time.
Yeah, there is no doubt about that. And we are definitely going to continue to stay on 8-man football in the off season as well. But one thing to note, and this goes for 1A through 4A as well as the 8-man final on Friday. Weather could very well be a factor. We don't know. You just don't know at this time of year, precipitation wise, what can happen. But again, you definitely gotta premise that going into every one of these breakdowns. So an 8-man certainly included in that as well. All right, Matt, let's go through Class 1A. Here are the results after the quarterfinal round. Again, Lena Winslow, they advance to another semifinal. They take care of Fulton 52-14. Forston beats Dakota. So again, the Cardinals, they make their way into the semifinals. And surprise, surprise, look who they're playing again. It is Lena Winslow and Forston for a chance to get to the state championship. They will play the winners of Colfax. They get a 41-6 win over Tuscola to advance. And of course, Colfax will host Camp Point Central. Camp Point Central with a 24-12 win over Greenfield Northwest. Setting up, Matt, the semifinals this weekend. Both games 2:00 on Saturday. Forston at Lena Winslow, and in the South bracket in 1A, Camp Point Central at Colfax. Matt, your thoughts?
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about, I think, the big matchup up north in terms of Lena and Forston. Forston obviously kept that game close later in the year. We'll see. They've had some dynamic games in the past, and there's been some games when Lena's been favored and Forston has won. I think Lena is going to have to fumble the ball a little bit. I think they are extremely powerful. I know, talking to Coach Lawler from Fulton, he said they are very, very powerful. They're very, very, very good, and they don't fumble the ball. They don't turn the ball over. In terms of the Camp Point game, I think it's going to be really interesting to see kind of how that unfolds. The running back, Isaac Jennebacher, is really good. Nick Moore is a quarterback. Brad Dixon will have his team ready. And, let's face it. I mean, I think when you talk about this Ridgeview team, here's a team that they were only up 13-6 at halftime against Tuscola. And in that situation, the Farrell kid kind of came down with an injury. So when that happened, they had to put another running back in there, and they just kind of did running back by committee. But they did a really good job of kind of containing the Quinn kid at quarterback. They made Tuscola kind of make some mistakes and kind of got them out of their rhythm, And then the thing is with this Ridgeview team, and I'm just talking to coaches, it's a bend but break defense. It's nothing dynamic, but they're very, very fundamentally sound. And then they just at the right time, they'll get a mistake. And when you make a mistake against Ridgeview, they pounce on it. And then once they get it, then they really just kind of knock you out. They just really wear you down. I think that's a credit to the HOIC and the conference they've played, because they played some dynamic teams here in Salt Fork and Tuscola, and they've withstood those storms and really just kind of, imposed their will on those teams in the third and fourth quarter.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So again, a terrific 1A semifinal set for this weekend. As I mentioned, both games 2:00 kickoff on Saturday. And again, the storyline in 1A continues to be the NUIC, whoever comes out of that game. And like you said, I'm expecting, certainly, I think, a closer game this time around. I just think the fact that they know each other so well, they know what each other's going to do before they even do it. I think that familiarity is a benefit to Forston going into this game. You've seen that beast once already this year. You know what you're up against. Doesn't mean you can stop it.
Yeah,
but it means you kind of know what's coming.
I will just say this: just looking at the scores of Forston, they're 5-4 going to the playoffs. Now they're 8-4. They very easily could have been 6-3, 7-2. Some of their losses, obviously, to Lena, to Dupec, a couple others. They've been battle tested. I just think it's going to be a dynamic 1A, how it's going to unfold. Whoever comes out of the north and whoever comes out of the south. I mean, literally, when you get to Champaign at 10 o'clock next Friday, it literally will come down to the coin
Yep.
toss because it's going to be a very quick, fast game. The last two championships that Lane has played in, and we're kind of going ahead of skipping ahead here, but the bottom line is they played a Central A&M team and a Carrollton team that were going to spread you out, throw it, and try to run it inside. That's not the case now. We got 4 Barry Switzer, Tom Osborne teams playing football in 1A, and should be a lot of fun to see who advances.
Yeah, I know that's right up your alley, pal.
Yep.
That's your kind of football.
There you go.
All right, Class 2A results after the quarterfinal round. Maroa, they do it again. They get a 21-7 win over Rock Ridge. They advance to the semifinal. They will take on and host Tri-Valley. Of course, Tri-Valley, a 46-22 win over Knoxville. So again, upper bracket of 2A. It is indeed Tri-Valley on the road at Maroa Forsyth. A 1 o'clock kickoff on Saturday. And the southern part of the bracket, Johnston City gets a 28. I'm sorry. Decatur St. Teresa gets a 37-12 win over Pana to advance. They will take on Johnston City. Johnston City with a 42-32 win over Althoff. Again, Matt, Althoff got awfully close as that 5-4, made a nice run there. But again, give Johnson City all the credit in the world. They're able to get that win to get into the semifinal. So we are set for Saturday, as I mentioned, in the north part of the bracket, Tri-Valley at Maroa, 1 o'clock Saturday. South bracket in 2A, we have Johnson City on the road. Indicator taking on St. Teresa. That is a 3 o'clock kickoff. And Matt, a lot of things behind this matchup for sure on both sides of the bracket. I think 4 really strong teams. I don't know. Weren't we calling pretty early on about a Decatur state title? Could that still happen here?
Well, yeah, I do. I will say I think it could happen, but let's don't count out this Johnson City team. Okay, now I'll just say this right now: their thing is they're foot to foot. They're absolutely massive up front. The Isaiah Watson kid is about 6 foot, 190 pounds. It's going to be toss right, toss left, and they're just going to try to shove it down your throat. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of see what happens there. I think all signs are leading to, a big game maybe by Joey Brummer, and Jeremy Walker. They've been kind of they've been the secret sauce all year for St. T. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, Jacarian Jones is a running back for St. T. Just a great player. Billy Geis on defense has made some key plays at key times. And then on the flip side of that, when you get into this Maroa game, man, storylines are there. You have 2 gritty coaches, Josh Roop and Coach Joseph there. Maroa, let's make no mistake about it. Aiden Reiser at running back, linebacker number 33 is massive.
Yep.
He was a difference maker in our game when we played him at Olympia. Cade Maurer, he's special, and I wish he would just graduate and get the heck out of there because we have to deal with him next year. I mean, he is just a phenomenal football player. And tip your hat off to Josh. They went all the way over to Taylor Ridge over by the Quad Cities. That's a long trip. That is not easy. And even though they were in control of that game was pretty tight. And so all signs are leading towards a Maroa St. T game. But again, St. T is going to be taking on an Athens type team in Johnson City that does nothing, makes no bones about it. They're going to try to run the ball. I'll talk more about Tri-Valley because I think they have a special football player right now that's really, really tearing things up in the running back. But I'll talk more about him later.
As far as Maroa is concerned, how do you think they would have fared if they would have been in a South bracket in 2A?
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's very different to see them in the North. Let's just face it. I mean, it's just different. I don't know. I think the likes of them playing, down there in 2A, I mean, I think they would have had a pretty easy path, to be quite honest with you. But at the same time, either way, North or South, I mean, I think they're earning their stripes. And nothing's been easy for them. I don't think this game against Johnson City is going to be easy. But Josh, I've seen him firsthand coach. He coaches hard on the sidelines. Yes, he has the dudes, and yes, he has the athletes. But, man, he pushes his guys. He tries to put athletes in position. Make no bones about it. I mean, he is the Lane Kiffin of high school football. He has all sorts of funky formations, but it's not tricks. It's not tricks and bells and whistles. It's fundamental football, and they're very, very good at it. And can they stop that run game from Johnson City? We'll find out.
No doubt about it. All right, making our way into
Take
class.
that back. They could stop that game from Tri-Valley. We'll find out.
Okay, moving on. We'll go to Class 3A. Here are the results after the quarterfinals. Immaculate Conception goes to overtime to beat Princeton 27-20. Matt, this was the game being watched around the state on Saturday. Even at the big 8A game I was at, there were quite a few guys on the sideline saying, hey, Immaculate Conception down 21-7 at halftime, not looking great, or 20-7 at halftime. And again, the Knights find their way back, and they beat Princeton to advance 27-20 in overtime. Byron, Reed Custer, Matt, you couldn't have drawn it up any harder for Reed Custer than what they had to face once again from Byron. And boy, give Jeff Boyer and that Byron program all the credit in the world. Matt, they just find a damn way to win. That's what they do.
Well, they don't know how to do anything else. They do what they do. They've had plenty of just talent over the last 3 years. This is deja vu and really weird, Tim, because this is the same type of win that they had this year. Last year.
Yeah.
Reed Custer scores with 2 minutes left, kicks the ball back off to Byron. Byron gets a squib kid about the 40-yard line. To make a long story short, after some big runs and a couple pass interference calls and a big counter, they literally punched the ball in on 2 consecutive wedges with like 7 seconds left.
Wow.
I mean, are you kidding me? Like, can the football gods be any more gentle and nicer to Byron Tiger football?
And worse to Reed Custer.
And it's heartbreak city. And Jeff will tell you, I mean, Reed Custer, pound for pound, probably has better athletes and probably maybe might have a better football team. But for that day,
they were not able
to get it done. And I will just say this, when you are in this sloppy, cold, nasty weather, running back by committee is kind of a good concept. And here's their committee, ladies and gentlemen. Ashton Henkel, Kai Aiken, Braden Knoll, Jacob Ross, Carson Bain. Those are all running backs. But I did forget someone. His name is Caden Considine, and he is a freshman, and he is 6'1", 200 pounds. His dad is the defensive coordinator, and he is the leader for rushing, and he has about 700 yards. That means all of those guys have between 3 to 5 to 6 to 700 yards.
Yep.
It literally is just come at you in waves, and tip your hat off to Jeff. He's got a big challenge ahead of him this week. They have to stop the Parker kid. I will just say, I know talking to Coach Pearson and doing the research on that, they were up 14-0 before he could even blink. But then athleticism and just flat out good coaching, IC came back and it just won a thriller.
Yeah, and again, just 2 incredible finishes. And then in the southern part of the 3A bracket, Unity, Scott Hamilton, again, 14-0 win in the semis over Prairie Central to advance. Unity will take on Williamsville. Williamsville, Matt, a 41-21 win over your Olympia ball club. And again, no shame in that game. You're a Final Four, or you're a Final 8 team. And just all the credit in the world to your guys at Olympia and that staff to make that run. It's a memorable run for your program there at Olympia. There's no question.
Well, let's just put it this way. You can kind of laugh about it now, but we had a lot of teary eyes there. And those football players and that coaching staff, especially run by Coach Lyons, it gave a lot of people in a lot of small towns a lot of hope and something to be really proud of. And I'll just say this, it wasn't death by 1,000 paper cuts. It was pretty quick and pretty ferocious early, and they were just too athletic and too aggressive for us up front. I said this earlier in the year when we played Williamsville. I thought they passed the DNA or the litmus test to be a state championship football team. They have one more test they have to get through. I think defensively they are rock solid up in the front. I think they have defensive end J.J. Watt, slimy, slick, lean, skinny football players, but they're very athletic and fast. They're very potent on offense. They do a lot of different things. It's going to be interesting. I mean, they're taking on a Scott Hamilton team that after that first loss, they've been a different football team. And, He's been there 29 years, ladies and gentlemen. He's 273 and 66 for just a mind-boggling 805 winning percentage. Jeff Sanders is the receiver. He has over 36 catches for 600 yards, about 7 touchdowns. Cale Rodden is the quarterback. He's about a 67% passing rating, has over 580 yards, rushing touchdowns. Austin Langendorf is a defensive end. And then Matt Brown, all-stater, running back, 1,800 yards, 22 touchdowns. This is going to be a great game at a great venue at Williamsville. Look for it to go right down to the wire.
Yeah, again, so just to recap, your Class 3A semifinal matchup, Byron taking on Immaculate Conception Saturday, 3 o'clock at Plunkett Park in Elmhurst. Boy, get there early, because I'll tell you what, Byron fans, it is, I'm sure they're familiar with it already. Very nice facility at Plunkett Park, but not a lot of parking. It is all neighborhood, and you're going to work your way around the rolling streets of Elmhurst, and which are very nice area. So you're fine over there. Just
what's the over and under that I will be calling you late at night with a recapture of the game like I did last year when Byron won. Remember that? I called you last year.
Yeah.
And you were doing other things, and
I picked up your phone. I picked up your call though, didn't I?
Oh, God.
I did.
I know, but that ending, it's just amazing.
I figured you got arrested. I don't know. If you're calling me on a Saturday during a playoffs, you probably got arrested. I'm kidding.
But you got to admit, that was an incredible 2-week journey for Byron. And now they're doing it again. I just think it's great for football. It's going to be a great atmosphere. Like you said, get there early.
And in the southern bracket of 3A, you have Unity there on the road at Williamsville. That is a 2 o'clock kickoff on Saturday. And again, I mean, it is a semifinals, Matt. There's no bad teams here. There are just top teams ready to go at it. And I think 2 very, very strong games here in the 3A semifinal.
It's going to be wonderful football. It's going to be wonderful.
No doubt about it. We will move our way up to Class 4A. The results from the quarterfinals: Providence Catholic gets a impressive 31-14 win over Richmond Burton. And again, Matt, if you're able to man up against Richmond Burton and go toe-to-toe and get a win from them, you're a good team. Wheaton St. Francis gets a 35-16 win on the road at Rochelle. Again, just that win on the road, no doubt about it. Impressive for Bob McMillan and the Spartans. And then here's a shocker. Rochester, 41-28 win over Carterville. We talked about Carterville. I had a feeling Carterville would make that a game, and it sure sounds like they did. Sacred Heart, 51-13 over Murfreesboro. So here we go. Leonard Bowl, I don't know how many now. It's in the double digits, I'm sure.
Yep.
Leonard Bowl, and of course, Matt, we knew about this for a while. Early in the week, we heard if this went down, it was going to be a Friday matchup, and here we go. Friday, 7 o'clock, Rochester at Sacred Heart Griffin for the southern part of the 4A bracket, and then the northern part of the bracket is Saturday at 2 o'clock, Providence at Wheaton St. Francis. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, like I said, just showing my age, I know the last time Wheaton St. Francis went to the state finals, they end up winning that over a Metamora team. And I know Coach Bob, I don't know him, but I know his son obviously is a really good football player. Coach Bob obviously has icon status in terms of what his legacy is for arena football and just his football IQ and just, everything. I think that'll be just an incredible battle. When we get to this Leonard Bowl, ladies and gentlemen, I've got to go over just a few notes that I've taken and that, Derek.
Let me cover a little bit on Providence and St. Francis, and then we'll devote plenty of time to the Leonard Bowl. I think what's interesting about this Providence Wheaton St. Francis game, we talk about it all the time, especially at this time of the year, matchups. How do these teams match up? I think Wheaton St. Francis, and again, you got to consider weather. How windy is it going to be? Wheaton St. Francis wants to throw the football. Wheaton St. Francis wants to go high tempo offense. They want to go 4 wide, 5 wide, spread the field. Alessio Milicevic. And Alessio, I butchered that last name. I apologize. I've known Alessio since he was like in 8th grade. Tremendous quarterback. He's made incredible strides in his game. A lot of weapons as well for Wheaton St. Francis. Dash Dorsey's a kid, committed to Kent State. Really good two-way player. And again, this is a team that will want to go high tempo. And again, I think for Providence, as we saw what Richmond Burton looked, Matt, if you can slow down a Richmond Burton power running game, you can pretty much slow down almost anyone else's power running game because Richmond Burton does it that well. And Providence defensively played that well on Saturday to win. So again, I find the matchup here on this game really, really intriguing. By the way, as a plug, and you know how I love to get those plugs in, we will have both Tyler Plants, Providence head coach, and Bob McMillan, head coach of Wheaton St. Francis on Pigskin Preview tomorrow night on WJOL in Joliet. Just go to my website. Follow me on Twitter. I tweet out links. You guys can watch us live from the studio, DM us questions, be a part of the show. We take phone calls too. But yeah, so if you're looking for some insights on either side of that one, we'll definitely cover it pretty heavily tomorrow night. Now, Leonard Bowl. I will be there on Friday night. Obviously excited to go cover it. There's no doubt. I've been watching the Leonard Bowl, I think, maybe since the first Leonard Bowl. I have to go back and look, but I might have actually been at the first Leonard Bowl. There's a lot of questions in this. How good is Derek's team? How much improvement have they made? What tricks from the trick bag is Derek going to throw out on Friday night? And how is Sacred Heart going to counter? Will the weather impact Sacred Heart more than Rochester or vice versa? Or will it just know both sides? A lot of interesting questions, Matt, going into the Leonard Bowl.
Well, I want to just skip back to what you're saying about the other game because I think it kind of crosses over to the Leonard Bowl. You know,
Sure.
and it's all about physicality. You know, if you like you said, if you can stop a Richmond Burton team, you got to be doing something well on defense, and you're really imposing your will. So I think back to that game, I think it's going to be really interesting to see if, you know, Providence's physicality maybe is too much for that Wheaton St. Francis team. That's not taking anything away from Coach Bob's team, but obviously they sent a message by beating a very good Richmond Burton running power team.
Yep.
So again, it's going to come down to what Derek has talked to me about in terms of this game, okay? And that is, you know, I asked him, like, what are the keys to a victory, you know? And he just told me, you know, turnovers, which we talk about every week, and then sustaining drives. You know, can they impose their physicality with a bigger running back? They have a bigger running back. They do not have this dynamic playmaker slinging the ball, although he can throw the ball, but he is a big running back playing quarterback. It's different. Can they do that? Can they keep the ball away from SHG? And then obviously, can they get some stops? Because, you know, Coach Ken's team is just dynamic. They have the players. They have the system. And so will Derek have some tricks up his sleeve? You know, I don't know. You know, and this whole thing, I asked Derek some questions. I just want to share them with you guys if I can, Tim. You know, I asked him about his dad, you know, like what is his dad? Why is his dad so good? And, you know, he just told me, you know, and you could probably tell me, you know, Coach Leonard in a lot of ways was ahead of his time. And he was ahead of his time
100%.
Before anybody knew anything. And I can tell you this firsthand because when I was at a Shriners game, you know, I would see him with binders this thick, and he would be talking to coaches about new things that he was getting from different college programs. And so, you know, Coach Leonard has been ahead of his time. He cares about his players, and I think that is something too. You know, it's not like he's just running this juggernaut of a program, and he's just very distant. He's very, very heartwarming to these kids. And I asked him too, I asked Derek, like, how has he influenced Illinois high school football, IHSA? And, you know, he truly believes that his dad has probably influenced high school football in this state more than anyone ever, you know, with offensive ideas and just kind of what he's done and how he's done it. and now he shares it with people, and I can tell you this, when I was at Fisher and I was dibble and dabbling with, just offensive ideas with some spread stuff for a little bit, I call up Ken Leonard and he takes my call for 30 minutes. He's done a lot of that. He's done a lot to help coaches and just people in general. And I can remember, when Washington had that terrible tornado, I don't know how they did it, but they took care of the Washington people by getting those busloads of people to come down there.
Yep.
And I think he's helped a lot of coaches and a lot of programs. And the last two things I asked Derek, I go, how's this week been? What's it been like? And Derek would flat out tell me it's been miserable, but it's very exciting.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
It was the similar reaction what he had last year when these two played. Obviously, much more at stake. It's a much higher emotional toll on both of them, but they're both going to be a wreck on Friday night, and we saw that. You saw that in both their faces pregame on Friday before that game, and probably 10 times as much this time. It's going to be enjoyable, but watching that and again, I'm completely honored to have a front row seat on that Friday. But it's going to be interesting to see the emotion on both sides. And I'll be watching the game, and I'll be getting photos and video of the action in the game. I'll be honest, pal, I'm as interested in what happens before and after the game than what happens during the game on Friday.
Well, there's a lot of emotions. And the last thing I'll just say about this, he just told me, like, it's miserable, but it's exciting at the same time, because competition and rivalry have been great for that area and great for that family.
Yeah.
And great for those schools that are very close together. And the last question I asked him, Tim, Eric, I go, what would your mom think? Now, as you know, Mrs. Leonard, no longer with us. And he told me, my mom would absolutely hate this because, but she would be glad it's over,
Right.
And both of these guys are just incredible faces and I guess entities for high school football in the state of Illinois. And my thoughts and prayers are with them, and it's going to be a great game, and I'm glad you're going to be there.
There's so many angles where Ken Leonard and the Leonard family, but really start with Ken at Sacred Heart, impacted football in that area, impacted a lot of things in that area, media coverage in that area. Between the State Journal Register and then Channel 1450, channel1450.com probably wouldn't have half the success without a Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart has been the bell cow in that area when it comes to football. Look, I live in the Will County area. We have a couple of those in this area, and they're both Catholic schools. And that's the way it just kind of goes. You get those rabid alumni, and you have them in the public schools. And I think small school football is a little bit different that way, where in the smaller towns, you get people that have lived there their whole lives, and they do live and die with their teams.
Yeah.
In the burbs and more in the city in the north, it's a little different. It gets mixed. People come and leave town easier, I think, or seem more, able to do that. A little bit more transplants versus people. So there is a difference. But boy, I mean, that program has had such success, and Ken has had such success over the years. And from the clinic standpoint to you mentioned the teaching and his offense and taking it to another level. And then all of a sudden he was Mr. Pass, and then he gets a running game going. Then all of a sudden he goes from pass to run. And again, just showing you how good of a coach he was. He could adjust on the fly to his personnel when he needed to. He'd do it and he'd still win. So, I mean, there's so many ways to admire him. And again, I've told you my story as well, where he's just been incredibly welcoming and didn't need to be, and just was. And that's that's the guy he is. And, I admire him for that. I admire him for all the success. I admire him for his faith. And that's easier.
I'm glad you brought that up, Tim.
It's easier said than done. People don't like to talk about faith in this era. And And that's fine. I mean, I know everyone has their own faith and their own beliefs, and whatever you believe in, that's cool. I'm great with it. But Ken's always been very upfront about his faith in Jesus Christ and giving praise, and I give him a lot of credit for that. Because in this era, it's not the thing to do, but he's always stuck by that. And him and Derek, I know how involved they are in a fellowship of Christian athletes,
Sure.
and so again, he's a man that lives by his faith and honors his faith, and just one of the many things I give him a ton of credit for over the years.
Just great for high school football.
Yeah. And they can coexist. Your faith and high school football, they can coexist.
Yeah, and without Kenny Leonard, you wouldn't have Derek Leonard, and Derek Leonard has had a big impact on a lot of players, a lot of coaches.
Right. And you want, I don't know how this is going to end. None of us do. However this ends, I just want Ken to go away knowing the impact he's made. I hope he does. Sometimes you don't, Matt. Sometimes a guy like Ken might not realize it, but believe me, he's had a tremendous impact for decades now in the state of Illinois in high school football. And I know people will tell him that I hope he realizes that he'll never be forgotten. I mean, the records alone, he'll never be forgotten. So again, not to bring everyone down, but I thought
it's a great story. It's a great moment, and we could talk forever about it because.
Well, we will next week.
We'll talk about him again next week. So.
Win, lose, or draw, we'll be talking about whoever won that game next week, and certainly talking about the other.
And probably after the state championship game.
And here's something I want to bring up to you, and something that I always catch the feels at this time of year. I caught it last week. And again, it's different. I cover, so I see a lot of different teams. I'm not tied into one team like you generally are as a coach. You see the agony of defeat. You see how kids and teams and coaches react. You have the euphoria on one side. You have just the agony on the other side, all within about a 2 to 3 minute period. And it is one of the most compelling moments I think you could ever witness. It is something that I don't think a college game with 100,000 fans can do justice to. It is truly, I mean, again, it makes you feel just honored to be on a field to see the efforts of both sides and the reactions and the emotional reactions of both sides. I hope people don't take that for granted. I hope the teams that win, obviously, you're just thrilled to win and keep going.
Well, I'll just tell you this. I hope that you do enjoy and embrace that moment down there, Tim, before the game, on the sidelines, coin toss.
Yeah. No doubt.
One of the things, and real quick, with my son that comes over and watches the games, he's flat out asked me, he's like, Dad, when Coach Lyons plays that Eminem song, he's like, I start to cry and I get happy tears. And I'm like, well, that's emotions. And I go, and that's healthy and that's good. And I go, when we're sitting there watching our kids on one knee, listen to Coach Lyons and the snowflakes are coming out of the sky. And it's kind of like touchdown Jesus is putting a little fairy dust on us, and my son looks at me and he's wanting to cry. And I'm like, these are emotions. These are good. These are good for you.
Yeah, there's no doubt. So again, just a little bit of a taste of high school playoff football and what's behind it and what makes it so unique and makes it so amazing. Again, it's communities all over the state. It's even if you're an 8A school, you're still a relatively small community of fans and teams and players and cheerleaders and band that this has been your life for the last 3 months. And it's coming to an end, and there's going to be 8 teams that are going to be very happy at the end of the year. And everyone else is going to be
pushing this Saturday.
Right there.
Friday and Saturday.
Yep. The other teams that were just right there, that close.
Yep.
So what else you got? Anything? You good?
Well, we got the 4 quarters video games.
Oh, of course. Of course. All right. So I have my notes here, and God forbid me, I've been just terrible today.
That's all right.
All right. I love this theme. I already have our cover graphic for this week for this 4 quarters.
I
It is
promise it'll
video.
be quick and fast.
It is video game theme. Fire away. Class 1A, an all-time classic. These are all all-time classics, but this is really an all-time classic. Uh, Matt Leng, known as the Glass Joe of Third and Lang. 1A is the Mike Tyson Punch-Out. Please explain.
Okay, one of the classic all-time video games, and let's face it, the Mike Tyson of 1A football, and it has been for a long time, is Lane and Winslow. They have outscored their teams this year 176, or their playoff teams 176 to 27. Are they going to knock out Forreston? And I will just say this, in terms of that Southern bracket, I think this is interesting. Can Can't Point deliver a knockout? Can they Can't Point deliver a shocker? They did do this the last time they were in the semis, getting ready to go to a title game. They did it in 2018 when they went over to a favored Argenta and the Stanley brothers, and they won that game, and they punched themselves into the state final against Forreston. Something to think about.
Look at you working in the punch and everything. Very proud of you on that one. Spent a little time on that. Way to go, Glass Joe. All right, Class 2A. You're a little too big for Glass Joe, though. Glass Joe is a skinny dude. You're a little too big for Glass Joe. Class 2A.
Istanbul is who I am.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I forgot about. Okay,
I forgot about it too.
It's a much better comp right there. Class 2A, you're calling Tecmo Bowl. Please explain.
Well, okay, Tecmo Bowl, I think this old video game Tecmo Bowl, back in the 90s, and if you used the Dallas Cowboys, you usually went with Emmitt Smith, and you would just run right or left, okay? And so that's exactly what Tri-Valley did, okay, with their running back. Blake Renegald, he rushed for a Class 2A playoff record of 417 yards on 32 carries against Knoxville. The Vikings are going to the semis for the second year in a row. I think it's going to be a great game, and we'll talk more about the weather a little bit later. But again, this game's going to be at Maroa. It'll be really interesting. Josh Roop and those Vikings will not back down. Can they withstand maybe a big play or two from Maroa? But I really like this Tecmo Bowl kind of Tri-Valley Viking team with that running back right there, and Blake. Josh does a great job. He's mixed it up over the years. He's always under the center. Now he's kind of out of the gun, but they still run the ball at you. It's Tecmo Bowl right, Tecmo Bowl left.
Love it. Class 3A, love this one. Donkey Kong versus Mario Brothers. Luigi, hey, Mario Brothers.
All right. So we got a couple of contrasting kind of video games right here. And the 3A semifinals is kind of like the Donkey Kong of all football games, okay? You have the Marios of the bracket, Byron and Tolono, trying to figure out how they're going to kind of navigate this game, okay? I mean, how are they going to kind of get over the obstacles and defeat the Donkey Kongs of their bracket, okay? Byron, they have another just incredible challenge ahead of them that they have to go up to IC. IC wants this game bad, but can they do it again? Can they pull off just a football miracle or football theater and beat IC, the kind of the Donkey Kong of 3A. I mean, let's face it. I mean, IC has the dudes. If you ask Jeff Boyer, he would tell you these guys are incredible. And then, hey, Tolono Unity, I mean, it's the same old story, and they're going against this electrifying Williamsville Bullet team. Aaron Coons has been on the turf, but it's just an incredible atmosphere. And, it's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top. And we could have a repeat of the 2021 title game, okay? And this is with Byron and Tolono. If Tolono could get past Williamsville and the game's being in Champaign this year, look for everybody to come out to that game. Either way, you're going to have some neat storylines. I'll talk about that later. But it's the Mario Brother game against Donkey Kong, 2 classics, 4 great teams.
And then finally, 4A, Street Fighter. Please explain.
Okay, well, Street Fighter. So if you kind of think back to the street fighting game, okay, you always had these rivals in these games, okay? And you had like Ryu or against Ken Masters, and there are two guys that kind of started off training together, and they were close, but then they later became rivals. And then on one side of the bracket, you kind of have these Catholic schools battling out, and on the other side, you're going to have these two guys who know each other pretty well. Okay, it's a father and son, and the son has won 8 state titles, and they're 9 miles apart. The storylines are galore, and this literally is going to be Street Fighter, and it's the final sequel. I mean, it really is going to be interesting, especially that battle up north. But it is the final sequel down in Springfield, and it's going to be really, really neat.
You sure?
Well, you're going to be there, so you're going to give me a report.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty certain this will be the last matchup between those two. So again, and then finally your overtime, my friend. I know that it's well, you're going to have to just describe your overtime because I know it. I would go with immediately, but
well, I'm going to kind of spoon feed this to you, or like you like to say, softball pitch this to you.
Sure.
I'd like to know your interesting thoughts on this. You're much smarter than I am.
No, not at all.
When I say arcade and pocket change versus smartphones,
yep.
It's going to be really interesting. I think kind of what happens. If you look at 1A, 2A, 3A, and 4A, we have some incredible storylines that could happen for Champaign, Illinois, and high school football. And my question is, as I watched a 3A game in Olympia, and this is not a knock on anybody, the crowds were good, but with video cameras there taping the games, with the games being played at bars and at televisions and parties, there were good crowds. I don't know if it was great crowds.
No,
I will tell you
that we have not talked a lot. 1A. Good point.
We have not talked a lot about the weather, but I can tell you, out in Olympia and in other areas, weather had a big impact, and people are not necessarily going to the games. So when I say arcades and quarters and pocket change versus this thing, things are changing, folks. I don't know whether it's going to be good or bad, but as we get ready to go to Champaign and there's a big decision to be made on where high school football is going to be played at, I want to kind of know what's next for the future of high school football. I'm not saying I'm concerned, but I'm very curious to what's going to happen. And we've talked about this.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone over this, and it's becoming a bigger issue. There is no doubt in my mind, even before the weather turned as cold as it's gotten the last couple of weeks, attendance has been down. And we'll never get those numbers out of the IHSA. We never will. They will never tell us, you know what, attendance, a little bit down this year. Now they will tell us the state title games, whether, what the attendance was for the weekend. They will give you that. But overall, you're not going to get it. What I'm afraid of is, as you mentioned, I don't think the appeal is any less, which is weird because I thought, Matt, from the games that I saw, and obviously I'm seeing bigger crowds in schools than you are. I thought attendance in the regular season was really strong. Like places I've gone to, a lot of ADs have said, hey, it's been really good this year. And everyone's reasoning was the same. I think the fact that COVID went away or didn't go away, but it obviously has lessened. People are more comfortable going out and going to games, and it was evident. And so I was excited going through the regular season, but the moment that weather hit, boom, lighter crowds all across the board. And as you mentioned, because of this thing. So IHSA is getting paid. We know that. And I don't want to get into a yin and yang with NFHS and the job that they do or don't do, because that's a whole other episode we can get into. I'm like you. I am concerned. I'm hoping it means the sport will continue to grow and the fans will continue to grow. Now, if we're splitting them out differently, okay, I get that. But I would like to know that. And unfortunately, with the state association, we never really will know for sure. We'll never be told what the viewership numbers are
Yeah.
on this thing, because if we know that, Matt, we're not the smartest guys in the world, but we can do math and we can take their viewers' time, what they're charging per game or per month or per year, and figure it out. The point being,
I just want to see people out of games. You know, everybody has access to every type of flat screen, computer, cell phone,
and
TV.
see, it's hard because you have grandma and grandpa in Arizona or Florida, or I've got Uncle Joe that lives in Wisconsin, and that's the beauty of this thing. You can watch this from anywhere. But I don't know how you manage it. I don't think anyone knows how you manage it right now.
I'm just concerned, not concerned, but just worried and curious. You know, I know for a fact for me, I know it's going to get dark at 3:30 on Saturday. It's going to be cold, but I've told my son, we're going to Colfax Ridgeview. You're wearing 3 pairs of socks, and we're going to get some fresh air.
Right.
I just know that there were some people that weren't at the game, and it's not just Olympia; it's everywhere. And things are changing, times are changing, and I'm just kind of curious of what's going to happen with our game, because we've overcome something historically crazy in our world.
Yeah, unprecedented.
Everybody came out. Now it's just a little bit different, and it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds.
Sounds like a good end of the year subject for me, sir.
Yes, sir.
We will tackle that end of the year, no question. But hey, that'll do it for the semifinal edition of Third and Leng. I want to thank everybody. I keep telling Matt this. People keep finding this stupid thing we do every week for an hour.
Thank you for listening, guys.
And we enjoy it. I mean, we love doing it, obviously, and you guys continue to watch in growing numbers, and that's awesome. So we appreciate it. We're going to continue to do this, and again, we'll be back next week. We'll preview the state final games, the 4 state final games. We'll recap the 8-man championship. We'll look ahead to the 1A through 4A state finals, and maybe get a little. Maybe throw a guest in. We'll see how things go. But
good luck to all the teams and all the coaches.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's going to be cold. It's going to be nasty, but it's going to be
all right.
A lot of emotions before and after and during the game. This is awesome.
All right. He's Matt Leng. I'm EDGYTIM. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll be back next week to do it all over again. So please go out, watch a game in person. Okay, if you got to do this thing, okay, fine. But go see a game in person. Go support your local community. Go watch a game. Thanks, everybody.